Welcome to the Rialto Marketing Podcast. Today's episode is a revenue acceleration series interview where we talk to seven-figure B2B professional service firm owners that are actively trying to grow their business and get to the next level. We talk about the good, the bad, and the ugly so that you can learn from their experience. I am Tim Fitzpatrick with Rialto Marketing, where we believe you must remove your revenue roadblocks if you want to accelerate growth, and marketing shouldn't be difficult. Thank you so much for taking the time to tune in. I am super excited to have Edward Stringfellow with me today from Stringfellow Technology Group. Edward, welcome, and thanks for being here.
Well, thanks for having me, Tim. I look forward to our conversation today.
Yeah, me too. And we're gonna have a really good conversation. I love the topic or the path that we're kind of going down. Before we jump into that, I want to ask you a few rapid fire questions. Are you ready to jump in with both feet?
Sure.
Okay, let's do it. Very quickly, what do you do? How long have you been doing it?
What do I do? Specific to Stringfellow, so 2005, I started what today is called a managed service provider. So we fix computers for people. Today, it's a much more sophisticated way that we say that. But at the end of the day, in 2005, I saw a need to help people with technology, and that's where the firm started.
What's the most important lesson you've learned since 2005 running your business?
Wow. There's so many. I think one of the biggest things is, well, one's hard. If I had to sum it up into one thing, it would probably be more self-awareness, right? To take the input from others and be self-aware of how you're impacting others and making sure that you're open to their advice and experiences and stuff. I think that can accelerate your learning and your business growth and all around. So as an entrepreneur, I think often we feel like we have to have all the answers, but the reality is to have that self-awareness to go find a mentor or check yourself or do that. I think that's been very helpful.
Yeah, I think it's hard for a lot of us, but the more self-aware we are, it opens us up to potential blind spots, and that's where the opportunities are. So
for sure.
I love that. So look, since 2005, I mean, there've been some ups, there's been some downs, and you just said it. Growing a business is hard. Do you have any kind of mantra or something motivational you say to yourself or you share with your team when you run into those roadblocks?
I think whenever you run into something difficult, you've got to know there's always tomorrow, right? Like you can be in the middle of something. Tomorrow is another day. We will not, what doesn't kill you kind of makes you stronger thing. I think keeping a level head and perspective on what we're doing. I don't know what others do, but I try to go to church on Sundays. And so I think there's a faith component to what I do, but what I would say is that nothing is that big, right?
Yeah.
I have 100% been sitting on a sofa looking at our payroll and spreadsheet and cash flow in the early days. And I thought, in 2 weeks, we literally will have no money, right? Like it'll just, there won't be any. And it was because we were selling computers and buying them and not getting the cash up front. So it wasn't, the P&L was spectacular. And I was like, this is so weird. And it's just because so we were financing our clients' equipment purchases. And as we grew, that became a bigger and bigger problem. But the point, I think a level head and just knowing that at the end of the day, there will be tomorrow, I think is a helpful way to think about that.
I think that it's a refreshing perspective to have. And it kind of, sometimes as entrepreneurs, we're like, oh my God, what just happened? Like, this is the end of the world. But when we really put it in perspective, most of the time it's really not.
Literally in most people's view, the worst thing that could happen is you would die. Like you would, which we've all at this point probably known people that passed away and stuff rather, and that's not going to happen typically. So it's like, it's not that bad. It's bad, but your health and you live to fight another day.
Yeah, we need to put it in perspective. So you recently niched into the healthcare space. After being in business, you were in business well over 15 years at that point.
Yep.
Can you share how you went about this process and the benefits you've experienced since making that change?
100%. So, as you said, we've been in business 15 years. So over 15 years of business, you will naturally kind of maybe find some segments that you work in, and that happens typically not because of your proactive marketing, but because of referrals, right? Yeah. So if you do a good job with this professional contractor, they tell all their buddies, and then you get the calls, and so that's a great way to, what I would consider, referrals are very almost a passive thing, and you're just taking what comes, which is not bad. I mean, we built to a couple of years back, and we built a very nice business off that model. But we looked one day and we said, okay, so we haven't been super niched, as it were. We kind of had three different ones, but we were talking, and we're like, so we have professional service contractors, we have healthcare, providers, and then we had kind of private and family business. Well, immediately private and privately held businesses, that's so broad as to be, I mean, you can't great. So basically our world would be non-public companies. Well, that's not, you can't market to that. That's not,
That's too broad.
So we took that out, and then we chuckled. We said, well, how are we going to market to professional contractors and healthcare? I said, well, we can have an ad of an injured construction worker getting in an urgent care facility. This is not, I mean, it's not super helpful. And so I was like, well, all right, let's stop. All right. So we got these two segments, and when you peel the onion back, a couple of things that I think are important for you. Niching down doesn't mean that you quit answering referrals and people's phone calls that are outside the niche. I think that's one of the biggest epiphanies that we had through the process is, wait a second, all our referrals are still coming in, because it's, hey, call string. They when you get a referral, they typically go to the site and find the contact info or what have you, and they come right in. They don't go look at maybe the copy and all the marketing. Yeah. So you don't kill off the referrals that are coming in. And then, man, the power of being niched down makes your marketing easier, makes your messaging easier, your buyer persona, like all these things that now, as I'm saying, were so patently obvious to me. Before, I think this might be helpful. Before, we were real comfortable with this fact. Oh, no, we're not industry specific. We're horizontal. Our market definition is 50 to 1,000 users. And then and non-financial. So we don't do finance for a number of reasons. But man, that's nothing. You can't market to that. Yeah. We're real proud of, it doesn't matter. To us, technology is technology. We don't care if you're a roofing company or a hospital. We can do both. And we could do both. But from a marketing and sales perspective, that kills you, because you're everything and nothing all at the same time. Right?
Yeah, when you go broad, the target is so large, all you see is red, right? The red bullseye, but you can't see where that bullseye actually is. When you niche, like you did in healthcare, all of a sudden you can see that bullseye. You know exactly where you're aiming.
If the bullseye's huge too, I mean, you kind of never miss, which that's not real, right? So no. And from an operational perspective, depending on what business you might be in, I mean, you don't get any economies of scale. Especially in our business, I mean, to be very good at one thing it's helpful, right? And you speak their language, and just everything becomes clearer and easier to manage. Also, too, in our business anyway. So now we're kind of the experts in these providers and healthcare clinics. So when we see an issue at one, it applies broadly across our base. So the clients actually get a better experience and service due to this. So it's a very virtuous thing to niche down.
So when you started this process, Edward, what was driving that? Like, why did you start to look at this? And did you do this yourself? Did you hire a consultant or a marketing provider to help you with that?
So we hired a marketing group, right? Sadly, we didn't know you at the time, but
that's okay. That's okay.
But I appreciate you still talking with me. But no, we found a little process, because we wanted a better website, it's more messaging and buyer personas. And the epiphany that this is not why they hired them to do the niche thing, but literally they presented us kind of with their review and their findings, and it was these three segments, that professional and the healthcare, and that's exactly what I thought. I was like, we can't do this. We have to pick one. And really, we were down to picking two. And I was like, and then I started sitting on it. And I said, well, wait a second. Over half of our business and experience, we're really good in the healthcare IT space. Why? What are we doing? Why would we not go all in? And I think the reason people don't go all in is because they're concerned about missing out on what isn't in the niche. And I, you need to pick a niche that has a TAM, a total addressable market that's reasonable. Like you can't, I'm only going to work with trucking companies that start with the letter Y. Well, then your one prospect just bankrupted 2 or 3.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
So that's not a niche, but a niche, I think, in my opinion, define a niche based on a total addressable market that's reasonable, that you could make a business. That kind of, they go hand in hand. And so when we looked at that, it was very obvious. And we are, go where your skills take you, right? Like you wake up one day and next thing you know, you work with all of these types of clients. Well, why would you fight that if that was, I think some business owners, I think the shift from I want all the business I can get, no matter what it is, to the right business is a big deal. So,
yeah, that's a huge key distinction. The other thing too that I think you're hitting on all the things that I always talk to people about. So, thank you. And frankly, that speaks to the experience that you've gone through, and how it's benefited your business. But it's when we look at picking a niche, one of the things I always focus on is out of your existing client base, because you don't, like you said, you don't need to reinvent the wheel. You've got customers that you've worked with.
Yeah.
Like, who do you love working with? Who's profitable? Who are you getting great results for? That is a great group to start digging deeper to see if you can find a niche. And, with healthcare, the other thing that we start to look at with a target market is, is it growing? Sure. Or at the very least, is it stable, right? You don't want to go into a niche that's declining.
But recession proof, and do we have the experience? And you're exactly right. So again, healthcare is, guess what? I mean, this is just our experience.
Not going anywhere.
Yeah. But healthcare is recession proof, not going anywhere. Blah blah. Professional contracting, although they're great, we have very good relationships with those folks. That's very much tied to the economy.
Yeah.
So like you start macroing out, which isn't bad. Like there's a group that there is a group, groups that they do what we do and only for, different areas. And that's fine. Again, if you're in the industry, you'll know these things, but golly, it makes all of your interactions, obviously on your marketing, but even your sales process, internal discussions, it really focuses you and gives you a lens to grow your business. I think you mentioned something very that some people gloss over. All your clients are not the same profitability.
No.
And I think a trap that a lot of groups get into is they think they have a business, but really they have 2 clients and a bunch of tiny clients, right? And the 2 clients are actually not good clients, but they're just the biggest. And so they get trapped. Well, why do they get trapped? They didn't do the marketing to get enough of the small ones to equal the 2 big. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And so you can kind of end up in this weird spot where you have a business, but the reality is you have, a client. I would suggest that any client that's over 10, let's call it 20 to be 9, over 20% of revenue. I mean, that would be concerning to me as a business owner. And
I agree. I think most CFOs would look at somewhere in that 10% range. Right. If you have one client that's more than 10% of your top line revenue, that's a potentially precarious place to be in.
Yeah. Or at a minimum, you want to attract the same size client, and then guess what? They'll be 5 and 5 and so on and so forth. So, but how do you do that? Well, to build the size of the pie, what do we have to do? We have to attract, we have to market to more groups, right?
Yeah.
And so if I'm going to spend time marketing more groups, again, you have the option now, because you're going to pick a niche, to market to the most profitable clients, right? Yeah. And so that again, it all goes hand in hand. And so depending on how long you've been in business too, you may not have this data. And so I think another thing that, especially when people are getting started, it seems that they market to the world and they don't have a niche because any dollar is a dollar. Any dollar is a good dollar.
Yeah.
I understand that. I mean, I could get that it would be difficult to out of the gate, be really niche down. But on the flip side of that coin is, what if you are your success is going to be. I've got to believe if you've got the right thesis and premise around your marketing, I think you'll be more successful faster than the other way.
Yeah. I think, because when you guys made this choice, you updated your website, your messaging, everything was geared towards healthcare.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, you went all in. I think a intermediary step, if as a business owner, you're really concerned about it, is to focus all your outbound marketing efforts on a specific niche.
Correct.
Right. Before you make that jump, but you just went all in. And when you did that, what happened?
Signed one of the larger deals we've ever signed in a month. Because here's the thing. If I'm a healthcare provider and I'm looking for IT, do I want to work with the group that is showing me that they're experienced in groups just like me, healthcare, and checking all the boxes, or do I just want to work with a decent IT shop?
Yeah.
Well, we're going to win every time from a marketing perspective, right? Obviously we have to back it up, and we do, but I would just suggest that marketing should also be differentiation. Many of us are not in unique businesses. I'm not, IT provider that's hard to differentiate. I mean, we make the green lights green, right? I'm sure we do more than that, and we do a really good job. But from a marketing perspective, you got to have something that you are, right? Like I don't want to just, who do you work with, Tim? Anybody that needs marketing. Well, yeah. I mean, I don't really want to grow my business. Oh, we'll take you on. Oh, I want a 10X. Oh, we'll take you on. I mean, that's not real. So it's one of our defining things is we want to work with groups that think technology can move them forward and help them improve, and they're willing to invest in it. And that is part of our marketing. And folks that basically want technology to be as cheap as possible, hopefully we don't attract them, right? Because that's not going to be a good relationship for them or us. So.
Yeah, so you thought pretty quick results once you made that shift. And now that you've been doing it, you mentioned this, everything has become, I hate to say easy because things are never easy, but they've become a lot simpler.
They become focused, simpler. Yeah, easy is probably, but they're focused, right? Like our conversations internally, externally, just the buyer personas. I mean, I'm sure everybody's familiar with that. Now it's like when we're calling on a practice administrator, we're very clear. We understand they have limited time in their day. They get 100 calls. Like it's really easy to add more value to them as well. So now it's not just marketing, but I mean, we really truly can, like what we're putting out, we want to add value. Like our blog posts aren't just these random clickbait things. We want you to read it and get some value out of it. And that's why you'll contact us, right? Like this isn't, we don't want to just spray and pray kind of thing. We want to add value via our content. How do you do that? Well, you have to pick a niche.
Yeah.
Because I could write articles about kind of generic password schemes but that's it. I don't think that's very effective from a marketing perspective.
Yeah. So what would you say to somebody that's, a business owner that's on the fence about actually picking a niche?
So, I would say, look at the business you have. Yeah. Look at the business you have. Do some analysis, and don't just look at revenue. Look at I think a lot of groups, they don't understand the concept of gross margin contribution.
Yeah.
And I don't want to we could do a whole another podcast on that, but in the shortest way I can make that is forget revenue. Hopefully, the gross profit. So your direct revenue minus your direct costs. In theory, you should have this. If you don't, go work on that first. But get your gross revenue for each client and then look at that percentage.
Yeah.
Because your biggest client may not necessarily be you want to look at who's giving the most gross profit and look at that contribution margin. And that's to me, that's the metric I would look at.
Yeah.
And then overlay industry or whatever, industry might be a side, client size might be a side, whatever those, you got to go find that for yourself. But you overlay the metrics, and there's going to be some combination of metrics or lens that pulls out all the high profitability ones. The high contributing one. And I would suggest if hopefully there's a theme, and there you go. That's how you pick that niche. I would agree with you too. You can put your toe in the water and market to those people. The challenge is typically we're pushing them to a website, and So,
it's not going to be as effective if you have one toe in the water. It's much more effective if you jump in with both feet.
And a question for you, right? So I'll flip it on you. Do you feel like in today's world, buyers, as I understand it, and this is a question for you, don't you think people are going to websites and self-educating a lot more before they're making that call? I mean, so I agree with you, but I think we both also agree it's a little counterproductive. You spend all this time crafting this very niche-based message, and then they go to your site and they're like, I mean, at a minimum, a landing page, like
right. Yeah.
something.
Yeah. It's not going to be as effective if you dip your toe in the water. I think you do need to commit, but it's a happy medium for people that are super cautious about, jumping in.
But the landing page is easy, right?
Yeah, it is.
For you, I mean, not for me, but for somebody like you. Anyway, so for the right group, that's straightforward enough to do.
Yeah, but it's based on your experience. It sounds like you have absolutely no regrets about making that choice. It's changed your business.
Well, it's focused our business. It's I mean, now we're able to. I mean, like we've built a sales. Before we really struggled with building kind of a sales organization because you can't. I mean, who are we calling on? Oh, well,
right.
Yeah, and that can get really frustrating. And if you're calling at one point a practice admin in a healthcare group and the next a foreman on a job site, that's two different conversations.
Yeah.
That's whiplash. And unfortunately, what that does is you got to go to the lowest common denominator. So you're going, hey, I'm Edward, and we're really good at fixing computers. Not a super powerful message.
Yeah. No. Well, it's difficult to speak their language. Healthcare providers have a different language than a contractor.
100%.
And so you can get much more specific. And one of my mentors said specificity sells, right? Mm-hmm. So the more specific you can get, the easier it's going to be to sell. And you guys have seen that and experienced it. The other thing you touched on that I think is easy for people to kind of gloss over is that, it's if I niche, I'm gonna miss out on business. And the reality is, if we really look at it, like most of our businesses, we're not looking for thousands of new clients.
No.
In the managed service provider space, most of the people I talk to, I mean, if they could get 10 to 15 new clients a year, they would be ecstatic.
Well, they probably wouldn't be able to handle it, right?
Yeah.
And let's throw this on top of it. What if they got 10 to 15 clients that were similar healthcare? They'd be a lot better off than if they got 15 random clients.
Yeah.
This is industry specific, but I think that goes with anything because then things become repeatable as you scale your business.
Yeah. Yeah. We haven't even talked about the efficiencies on the back end, right?
Oh, yeah. This is more profitable.
Yeah. Your stack is consistent. Your processes are consistent. You're not reinventing the wheel each time you deal with the client. So there's just tons of economies of scale there. But if we look at it, so if you need 10 to 15 clients and you're going to niche, there's very little risk. I mean, going into health, how many healthcare clients are there? There's so many out there, so niching, if you really break it down, niching and specializing in a specific industry there's very little risk.
I don't think I couldn't agree more. Again, as a startup, maybe you don't have some data, maybe you don't, unfortunately, maybe you pick a niche and you're actually not good at it. That could be a risk, right? Yeah. But that's part of being a business owner. I mean, you have to have some market research. I mean, I can't tell you, that if you're marketing to a niche that you can't serve well, that's not a marketing problem.
But I would say you're better off picking a niche and shifting 12 months later than you are throwing out a net in the middle of the ocean.
100%.
Right. And I think most of us who are starting businesses do have experience in previous industries. That's a great way to start, right? If you've got experience in an industry, well, start there. If it's a good industry and it's an industry that you want to be in.
Or relationships.
Yeah,
for sure.
So, I mean, there's multiple ways to do it, but so niching, obviously a huge benefit for you. I appreciate you sharing it because this is something that I preach all the time, and it is really hard for most business owners to to really take hold of it, but there are so many examples of people that have benefited by really focusing. Um, but if you had to pick one thing over the close to 20 years you've been in business, what would you say has been the biggest driver of your growth?
The biggest driver of our growth has been, I mean, long-term relationships. So I know this is marketing specific, but we value relationships we have with our clients, and I think you got to do a good job. So excellent marketing and whatever product, service, business you're in, if you can't deliver, then you will, that will be a tough road too.
Yes, yeah, absolutely.
So do what you're going to say. Do whatever it is well. Don't cut corners. We had a different experience. We went and built kind of the perfect service delivery model and all these kinds of things, and then we've gone the other way to build the sales and marketing side. And so that's a slower growth path, and now we'll accelerate at the end potentially. Versus, I do think a lot of folks, they'll start with the sales and marketing and then they'll figure it out. And that has its own set of challenges. So, but what I would say is make sure there's a balance.
Yeah,
it's not right or wrong, but I would suggest that don't go and make a website up and market things that you are not good at. That recipe, because that could also not be good.
Yeah. You definitely have to have that balance. Obviously I'm biased as a marketer, but if you don't have sales and marketing bringing in leads and clients, then all the rest of it doesn't really matter, because you're just the best kept secret out there. But once you have marketing generating leads that are turning into clients, you have to be able to fulfill on the promises that
you got to be able to deliver, right? So think about that too, and I don't know. Marketing is important, but to your point, it can be A/B tested and tweaked. And it's not set in stone anymore. I mean, we're not printing out a case of pamphlets we're going to walk around an office park and hand out.
Yeah.
I mean, it's the internet. I mean, literally, your website can look different for every visitor if you want to get into that.
Yeah.
And so don't get hung up on the details as you're getting started. Just get started, and you'll have data to see what's working and what's not.
Edward, one of the things that you expressed to me was a challenge about marketing for you was just validating the return on investment, which this is super common. So, I'm just curious, what are some of the things that you're trying to do to solve that challenge?
So it's still a challenge, right? We have by no means solved it. I think you've got to ensure that wherever you're driving, that handoff from an MQL, a marketing qualified lead, to a sales qualified lead, you got to be real clear about how is this happening? How are we getting? How did they do a form fill on the site? Did they find us? And be sure to ask. Make sure part of the sales process. So once sales is involved, but hey, that's why we get that on all the surveys. How did you hear about us? Because they're trying to validate that if you pick the the website versus this, they're gonna invest more in whatever channel is delivering it for. And so, that's pretty straightforward. But just ask, hey, how did you find us? How did you hear about it? Well, my buddy said whatever. Okay, cool. And then after he said that, how did you find us though? Did you do a Google search? Were we an ad you clicked on? Did you go to our website? Like what? How did you actually get to us? Because that needs to get looped back into marketing strategy and spend, quite frankly.
Yeah.
In marketing class I had, you get an MBA, it was like literally you would find that whatever's delivering the most, and you would spend all the dollars you could until it quit returning, because that's what you would do. So if you find that some type of social media ads they just really work well, great. If you find that that really slick website, okay, do that. I mean, you got to figure out what channels it's coming in to.
Yeah.
Which is 101 stuff, but step one, measure it.
Yeah. Yes. Thank you so much. The first key, like you said, is you have to measure it. What are you going to measure? You need to identify which metrics you're going to track that are going to help guide the decisions that you make. And what metrics you track are really going to depend on the activities that you're taking. I always like to keep things simple. There are a lot of business owners that aren't tracking anything, right? So to me, it's how many leads are we generating? you just touched on this, Edward, which is where are they coming from? And most people aren't even asking. Is asking foolproof? No, it is not, but it is better than doing nothing.
Correct.
So when leads come in, it's like you said, it's, hey, how did you find us? Where did you come from? And as we start to gather that data, now we know, oh my gosh, like 75% of our leads are coming in through referral, or geez, we have 50% of our leads coming in through our website. Great. Like SEO is driving traffic to our website, right? At least at a high level, we have much better indication of what marketing activities we're taking are actually driving results. And then from there, it's how many new clients do we get, right? Even with those 3 metrics, which we can get way more sophisticated with marketing, but even if you have those 3 metrics, you can actually, how many leads you need to generate to get a client. And
it's all about working backwards, right? So you start with what you want, you go backwards. And the challenge is, I think for most folks, they conceptually get it and even functionally get it, and then they just don't follow it. That's the challenge. It's a very short-lived, everybody's excited, the new website gets launched, we pay a bunch of attention to it for a month, it generates some leads. Oh, it's working. Well, yeah, but it's a work in progress, right? So you do have to kind of, these are an ongoing, marketing's an ongoing thing. It's a contact sport. It's not a one time.
Yeah. Yes.
I think, and then 6 months later, they've done nothing and they go, oh, this didn't work. It was like, well, no, it did work for a month, and then you quit paying attention to it.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. We stopped looking at the metrics.
Yeah.
The other challenge too is there's so many vanity metrics with marketing that just don't mean much, right? And so that's why, again, it just goes back to the importance of really identifying what metrics are the most important and just letting the rest go. Because in the end, like, I don't really care how many social media followers you have. If they're not generating leads, then who cares?
Google Analytics. You can spend a lot of time in Google Analytics.
Oh yeah,
slicing and dicing and average site views. And at the end of the day, all right. So all that time spent on the site, did that call to action or whatever you have out there, did that call to action inspire them to reach out and make a connection?
Yep.
Yep.
Well, and one of the things, I don't want to go too into the weeds on this, but one of the things that we find super helpful at a fundamental level with Google Analytics is setting up goals. What are the goals that you want people to complete, and attach goal values to those? Because when you can attach values to those, then all of a sudden, every month when you look at your goal conversions with Google Analytics, you go, gosh, we had X amount of dollars worth of goal conversions on Google Analytics. Like, that starts to give you a lot more concrete data about whether your website's, how effective it actually is.
Well, and another point, hire us to run your IT, maybe hire you to run some of that stuff, because this is the other thing. It's a machine. The thing's huge. I mean, you could, this idea that, Google AdWords, right? Oh, we're just going to pay for search and SEO. Well, it doesn't work that way. I mean, you got to understand how these tools work. It's not, we've blown through in years past, $3,000, $4,000, $5,000 a month, putting them in AdWords because we didn't know what we're doing. So I think the other piece is to have a marketing function internally, maybe, but really more of a partner, because it's too big a world. It's kind of like folks that have, we've got an internal IT, function. It's like, well, yeah, but like this is a huge world. Like, there's one person is just not going to know what all needs to know. So I think a plug for the partnering with some type of marketing group is really going to give you a much higher return. And maybe over time you kind of figure out what works and what kind of they're doing. And maybe you don't need that long term. But to get started, you asked, okay, pick the niche and then find a partner to help you put that together.
Yeah. Unless you have a large team, which most businesses are not going to get large enough to have, a marketing team of 10 to 20 people. It's too broad, like you touched on. Like, one person, unicorns do not exist. You're not going to be able to hire one person that can do it all. It's just impossible.
But if you can, they're going to go work for a Fortune 100 company. they're not going to work for you. I mean,
no. And so it's for a lot of small businesses, it's really going to be a combination. You may have an in-house function or a part-time in-house function, and then you may have one or multiple outsourced partners to implement on very specific tactics and channels that you want to take advantage of, because those people are great at that specific thing.
That's right.
So it's I love it. This has been a fantastic conversation. I have a couple more questions for you, Edward, before we wrap things up. First off, just what's next? What are your plans for the future?
Plans for the future. We kind of work on a 3 to 5 year time horizon and planning. And so for us, we're based in Nashville, Tennessee, and we've gotten a lot of traction in the healthcare provider space. So I think we're going to continue to invest in understanding that industry and delivering our products and services into that space. I think the need is there. So we're seeing it time and time again. Healthcare is not business, and business is not healthcare. And the reality is that technology's moved very quickly, and healthcare is behind. So we want to be part of that solution. So for us, it's continuing to watch our marketing functions and lead to new sales, and then onboard the clients and add value to them, and just have that cycle going. I think the journey, having kind of decided on this niche, I guess it was really not even that long ago, but basically about a year ago is when this all kind of came about. So it took a minute to get, the frameworks and this, and you get the website, get a sales team spun up, like all that's happening. So now I'm excited to watch kind of the fruits of that get produced over the next 2 to 3 years and see where we end up.
Knowing what you know now, anything you do differently?
In like all of life, or just business, or
I would say let's keep it to business.
In business, I think I would, as an entrepreneur, you kind of do it all. I think as soon as it's, the business can support it and it's reasonable, hire the best people you can. Only hire A players. I think, and when I say A players, you referred to unicorns. I don't mean unicorns, and I don't mean people you can't afford. But for any given company size and role that you need, there is an A player out there. Okay, so that the A player for our service desk when we were half the size is different than the A player today, right? It evolves and moves, but hire A players and listen to them and take feedback from them and do that. Don't try to do it all yourself. I think that can be the name of the game. Get good, excited people on the team. You got A players. It will pay off over time to build a team that's that way.
You just brought this back full circle, right? About self-awareness, right? Have the self-awareness to know that you can't do it all.
For sure.
And you got to hire people for the things that you're not great at. I absolutely love it. Edward, where can people learn more about you?
Well, obviously, our website, stringfellow.com. That's all things Stringfellow. I hope that it's easy to contact us if you feel compelled to do so. But go there and you can learn all about what we're doing in the healthcare IT space.
Awesome. Edward, thank you so much. Of course. If you're interested, reach out, connect over at stringfellow.com. We'll make sure that link is in the show notes. Those of you that are watching, listening, I appreciate you doing so as well. I have really enjoyed this conversation with Edward today. We spent a ton of time talking about niching, which to me is all about target market and who your ideal clients are within that market. So thank you for sharing that. And that is one of the 9 revenue roadblocks that we help clients remove so they can accelerate growth. So if you want to know which of the 9 are slowing down your growth, you can do that over at revenueroadblockscorecard.com. You can also always connect with us over at rialtomarketing.com as well. So Edward, thank you so much. Those of you watching, listening, thank you. And until next time, take care.